Hi everybody, welcome to another video with Nicky Schuller, and my name is Monika Schaffner. And we thought about talking today more or less about the topic of the ego and what is the ego for us and how can we take a step back from our ego and observe everything from a higher perspective. But then we're open where it's taking us, so we'll just start. Nicky, yes, I give you the word. What is the ego for you? Because I think a lot of times people use a name for something, but still they have a different idea about it.
Hi, everybody, and thank you, Monika, for hosting this and being here with me. So for me, I guess the ego is kind of our old self combined with, those mind structures and those programs that, keep us in that loop and that aren't in the moment. Because for me, it's a little hard. I guess it's it's been such a clear concept in my mind, or like something that I know of so well, to put it into words of what exactly, not that we don't need the mind. I do believe that our mind is important for specific things, but what has happened over the course of, I guess, hundreds of years is that our mind has kind of become a bit of a little monster, or a bigger monster, depending on where we're at. And it likes to beat us. It likes to be very destructive and very, with its mind loops. Like even just that, just being very present. When people try to be present or meditate or whatever you want to call it, they realize that it's really, really difficult for them. And it is sometimes for me as well, like for all of us, right? And it's just kind of like that. You start thinking of something maybe that happened, and you go in circles maybe of how you wanted it to be different. And you keep on repeating it over and over and over again. And you're just in that circle without even realizing that it's kind of insanity, right? Thinking about the same thing over and over again. If you would talk to somebody and keep on repeating that sentence, that person would tell you that you're insane. But a lot of times, like, we don't realize that it is that way. And for me, the ego, I guess, is a part of the mind. It's part of the pain body.
Yes.
Right. And it's kind of, for me, it's a few different things. And it's often just that, are you are you in the ego, or are you present? Are you in your head, or are you in your heart? Right? Are you conscious in your body? Are you like unconscious, or are you conscious? So that's kind of the ego for me, if that makes sense. How is it for you?
And I realized also in later conversation with other people that I really had to think, yes, what exactly is it for me? And it's, of course, it's also the mind, but as you also said, it's not just the mind, because the mind is useful for taking decisions, for learning, for progressing. We also need the mind. But then, as you said, something which comes and comes and comes and helps us from seeing what really is, or which prevents us from coming out of the victim mode. And for me also, the ego is the thing, or the personality that thinks that something is this way and not different. And the ego is also, as you said, the pain body. So when we act emotionally, when there's a certain situation in the outside, we just go in and we defend ourselves, and that's then for me the ego. And I was also thinking about, when I say here on earth, I'm a woman, I'm 42 years old, and I work as a coach, a healer, and so on, then we could also say this is the ego, but for me, it's then just the fact as a human being. But I know that my essence is soul and that I'm multidimensional. So for me, it's not, or it is actually a paradox that I am both. I'm limitless, I'm genderless in my essence, but here on earth, I'm incarnated as a woman, and I have certain aspects which help me in this world. So it's, for me, it depends if we consider that as ego or not. And you see, it's very difficult to describe it because we use words here, spoken words still. And for me, the most important thing is when we talk with other people to know, what do you mean when you say this? And then we more or less know that we talk about the same things, because if we just use words, we might have a completely different idea behind the word, and we start fighting and we realize, oh, we don't mean the same thing, but we use the same word. And that's for everything, not just for the ego. So yes.
Absolutely. I believe with what you just said, it's so perfect because, like, however we've incarnated, and I believe that attachment, or the identification with it is the clutch in the end, right? That will be something that'll be the issue, right? If I identify with, I'm an energy healer, right? And that is what I am, right? Or I'm married and that's my identification. That becomes the issue on so many different levels, because on one hand, the ego, that's what the ego likes to do. It likes to, it likes to be better than others. It's or much better. And if it can't be better, it'll go into victim mode and it'll be, the poor little one, right? The ego does one or the other. So it's always trying to, or put itself way above somebody else, right? Meaning that, then you can put down the other person without even realizing it, or then it goes way beneath it. And then it's like, oh, poor little me, right? That's so typical for the ego. And what the ego also really likes to do is it just really likes to be in that momentum of whatever it's created, of like dread or, horribleness, or, beating us, and that's just so, it just likes to be stuck in that ickiness. And that's just such a big thing of the ego. It likes judgment, judging everything, judging yourself, judging other people. It's all of that. And it's just so, it's so destructive in the end, right? It's so, beating ourselves up, where is that getting us? Or even judging other people for things we don't even know. Like, we think we know better, but we really, really don't. We don't know what's going on in the other person's life in that moment. Or for, like you said before, like even just that, keeping things small, right? Or all of that. And it's just so, I believe it's really, really important to start to observe ourselves, like everything, in the sense of observe our mind, our thoughts, observe our spoken word, and observe our actions, like, how does that feel? Is that compassionate? Is that coming from a loving place? Is that coming from, not that we don't, like, it's also important to stand in our power, but from where are you coming from,
Yeah, it's the intention you have. And I also experienced it that some people told me, oh, your ego is really, really big, when I told something. And for me, it was just speaking something out of the heart, and it triggered the other person. So in my place, I know that I wasn't in the ego, but I triggered the other person. So it's also, as you said, what is the intention? Do I act from the heart, or do I act from unconscious point of view? So it can still, it can still come to the other person as ego, but that's not what it probably is. It could be, but it's also possible that it's not what it really is.
Yeah, and I mean, it also
uh-huh.
comes down to also, the different perspectives on things. Like I've
Yeah.
had a situation a couple of months ago where this person said to me, I was being disrespectful, right?
Yes.
And being respectful is something that's so, so important to me, right? And
Uh-huh,
and
uh-huh.
honoring other people and from I looked at it from all of the angles and I was I really didn't feel like I was being disrespectful. I was being very respectful towards that
Uh-huh,
person and towards myself. Like being
uh-huh,
respectful towards somebody else doesn't mean that we disrespect ourselves, right?
uh-huh,
So so I mean, so it's that balance that I believe that is so important. And also like taking a look at ourselves, right? Like with what you said just before, the person said you were coming from your ego. Well, I believe if somebody tells me that, it's important to take a step back and really look at it from all of the angles. Am I really coming,
uh-huh,
from my heart in that moment, or do I have a program running, right? Do I have a belief system, or am I not
uh-huh,
seeing all of the points in that moment? But
uh-huh,
then if I look at it from all of the angles and I'm like, no, I am coming from my heart, right? That self-reflection is also really
uh-huh,
important,
uh-huh.
which again, I mean, I assume in that moment you didn't start defending yourself or didn't start, but maybe you did, right? But because that
Yeah.
sometimes can happen, but then that means the ego came in, right? And then taking that self-reflectory step back and just looking at it and being like,
Uh-huh,
okay, well, I see that you feel that it is that way. I honor you for that. But
uh-huh,
for
uh-huh,
me, it doesn't feel that way. And staying calm. And
uh-huh,
that's something that I really deeply believe. Not that you have to be calm when you're not calm, but because I do believe we need to look at all of the emotions that we have. But how do we behave, in front of other people? Like if a strong emotion comes up, I do my best. If I can't control it, we don't need to
uh-huh,
control it necessarily, but if I feel like it's coming up and I would like start screaming at the other person or whatever it wants to be, I excuse myself. I go to the bathroom, I go outside. I do excuse myself. That's important. Tell them I'll come back and
uh-huh,
I'll
uh-huh.
release that and let it out. And I'll come back when the emotion is released and I speak to them, without those strong emotions. I speak to them just from my heart again,
Uh-huh.
like open communication, but not through emotions, right? Because the emotion is mine, it's not theirs.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Right. And the ego would want to be like, oh, they hurt me. I need to defend myself. I need to get back at them, like prove them wrong, all of that stuff. That's so ego.
Yes, and as you said, an important thing is also to forgive then when something happened, when we're in the emotion or when we're starting to point with the finger to other situations or other people, even if it happens, then to take a moment, take a deep breathing and realize, okay, it's coming from my perspective, from my unresolved whatever situation, and then have the courage or just I think demut. What's demut?
A humbleness.
The humbleness to say something, because I realized some months ago when something happened with some people, and really I'm hardly ever really angry, but there's something really came up, and in the moment where it came up, I realized it has something to do with me, and I apologized while I was crying and screaming, and I wasn't really, I thought, who is that coming out from me? And I said, sorry, it's nobody's fault, but there's something that needed to come out and which I suppressed for a very, very long time, and it's not your fault. And then I could breathe again, and I was calm again. And of course they were a little bit distracted because they haven't known me like that, but I realized it's nobody's fault, it's just happened. So
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah, and I believe that's so important, right? That there are no faults. If we get triggered, the trigger is inside of us. If the
uh-huh,
other person gets triggered, the other person has a trigger, right? Maybe I did say something and then I realized, oh, I would have been nice that I would have done it maybe differently,
yes,
and that we can like, you know, express that. But there's no faults, right? It's like, if I say to you, oh, your purple hair look funny today, you'll just stand there and you're like, I don't have purple hair. I don't know what this person's talking about. And you wouldn't even give it a second thought, right? But if I say, you know, you didn't do this good enough, maybe, or if I say, you know, what you did, I don't know, you know, what you did, you didn't do it consciously enough or something, that might trigger, right? And then but that's yours in that moment. If I say you have purple hair, or if I say you're not good enough, both stuff is potentially just, you know, whatever it is. But when we start to react upon it, and that's something for me that's so we the ego likes to put it outside of ourselves, right? It likes to, again, like you said before, it likes to point fingers, and it likes to be the victim also, like you said before. But it's not. The world is our creation. And I'm not saying, so I know that horrible things happen.
Yes,
3D on this world is based on, it's an ego-based world. The third dimension is an ego-based world. That means it's based on fear, it's based on hate, it's based on, well, we see it, war, all of that type of stuff. It's based on greed. That's not the fifth dimension, though. And on the third, stuff do happen. And that's also, some things are also, you know, karma, because karma still does exist in the third dimension, right? So if we need to unravel for us to unravel our karma, that also means we need to also experience those stuff that happen, right? It's not, there's, again, like we said last time, there is no fault. It's not your fault that it's happening, but it is karma, right? Some of it is just a pure projection, and some of it is also karma, right?
And you mean the personal karma, and for me it's also, you know, the world's karma. I think a lot of what we're going through now is just a collective field we have to go through, all of it, and some of them resonate and some of them not, but it's our worldless karma, I'd say, or it's our learning what's happening right now.
Yeah.
So,
and also, like, karma is a universal law in the third dimension, right? Karma is a law. It's there. And karma means what you give out, you get back, in the sense of, if I slap you, that soul, that being, at some point is going to have to slap me back. If I help you,
I would say maybe it's not one-to-one, but it's kind of, you know. Or do you see it as one-to-one? Because for me, it's just, you know, the energetic thing or the feeling you need to go through again, not as a punishment, but as a learning. Or how do you see it? You said when you punch somebody, you get a punch back. It could also be, for me, on the energy level, but not on the, you know, not in the deed itself.
So for me, it's, generally speaking, it's one-to-one. So let's say I step on an ant in one life, that soul fraction of the ant will have to step on me, not as an ant, because that's not possible and it's passed away. Will have to step on me. That said, with the unraveling of what's happening now, because we are unraveling our karma, meaning that in the fifth dimension, karma doesn't exist anymore unless we recreate it. So through the unraveling, we're capable of going through the karma in our dreams, so we can unravel it. That's why a lot of dream states, dream time is used to do that. And we can also clear energetically nowadays. I think it's since 2012. Maybe it would have been possible for some earlier, I don't know. But for me, it's really, I knew a Swamiji. He used to say, you have the iron chains of karma, and you have the golden. The golden are the good deeds you did, and the iron are but they both connect you to earth and don't really let you leave, right? And so we have to undo that. So imagine just in one lifetime, how many things you've done, right? How many times? The other day I was doing yoga on my mat outside, And there were like a ton of little lices that were coming onto my mat that I didn't realize. And I kept on with my hands accidentally, killing them because I was going through. And at one point I'm like, what's this black stuff all over, right? Look at all those insects I killed, right? And with the law of karma, right? So imagine just all of these lifetimes we've had and how much we have to unravel, right? Mm-hmm. So, and with the high vibration, how much it's all coming together now because we're unraveling it, right? That's how it is for me.
Yeah, but for me, it's also the intention, sometimes you do something which can be viewed as bad, but if your intention was good to protect something or somebody, or maybe I have killed thousands of ants or so, but not deliberately, for me, this is really, where does it come from? Do you do something deliberately, really with the intention of hurting something, or do you just live your life and do something and then something happened? Then we are again at the point, was it done on purpose? When you sit there very relaxed and somebody stumbles over your foot, then is it your fault? I would say then it's karma if you deliberately pulled out your foot in order for somebody to stumble over. Then I'd say it's bad karma. But if you just sat there very relaxed and somebody stumbles over your foot, it's nobody's karma. It's just unlucky. I don't know how to say it, an unlucky situation. For me, we have to differentiate. Is it on purpose, or do things happen sometimes? And it's not that I'm, that I'm lazy or unaware. If I'm relaxed and holding out my feet and somebody stumbles over, then it's not unconsciousness. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. But aren't you going back into duality through that? Like right now you're saying, good karma, bad karma, but karma is just karma. There is no good or the
yeah, right? Yeah, I labeled it the way. That's true. That's
and like what I said before with the iron chains and the golden chains, right? But that was before. If you started to unravel, your karma, and it's you can get to the point where it's balanced, right? It's technically gone, okay. And you're in a higher dimension, right? And then from there, if you stay conscious with everything you do, right, then you don't recreate karma anymore. I think that's what you're saying right now with your consciousness. When you're conscious and then, some things happen, there's also soul agreements, of course, right? Yes. But for the karmic cycle we were in, it's the good karma and the bad karma, good and bad. It just is. Karma is karma. It doesn't matter if it was intentional from before. If it was intentional, not intentional, every single thing we did in the past just tied us to all of those events and all of those people. That's just what I'm trying to say right now. And the third dimension, that's why things are unraveling and getting also so intense right now, because all of that karma from, I don't know how many lives we've had, needs to get balanced and unraveled, right? So it's getting really intense in that sense until you leave that dimension and you've balanced out your karma, right? Until we not technically balanced out one-to-one, like I said, it's also energetical balancing. It's also right through a dream state and all of that. If that makes sense, right?
Yes, and for me, it's also important to say to people when they do something in this life, which we would say I call it bad karma, just in order to understand, then it's not, you have to wait until another life to say, oh, now you have to wait until another life, and might be in 200 years, only then you can resolve it. You can resolve it now. If you really done something on purpose, you can forgive and heal it and clear it now in this life, seconds later or weeks later, or you can forgive for something which has happened 20 years ago, and you're free of karma, of that beholding karma. So it's not true for me if people say, yeah, then in the next life you have to go all through that again, because as you said, this is over, or we are in this transitional phase where we step out of all these things and we're going into the fifth dimension. And for me, in the fifth dimension, it's not possible to have that kind of negative karma, because it's not possible energetically, not anymore.
Yes.
So it's
yes, but we can recreate it. Like if we go unconscious and we start doing things unconscious, also in the fifth dimension, we can start recreating karma. Like it's not like, yeah, I'm in the fifth dimension, everything's awesome, blah 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 blah. It won't happen again, and then I go unconscious. Like it's important to stay conscious, because if we don't, we will start recreating karmic loops.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know how it will really be, but for me, the fifth dimension means that you cannot drop into a certain frequency, which brings you the kind of negative karma. But it's my view, because it's just energetically not possible. You would even have a thought, a negative thought, and the thought it just goes away. I mean, or I don't know. It's my idea. But you know, it's also a process. We're just expanding our consciousness, and for me, fifth dimension is a state, and then it goes on and on and on, and it might be possible with what you said, but for me, at a certain point, it's just things are not possible anymore, because it's energetically out of the way. Not it's like, you know, if you want to do something, even not possible.
I feel like, I mean, in the sense of it depends. Like what's happening right now has never happened before, right?
Yes.
We're ascending with our physical body into a higher dimension. The ascension, like being in the higher dimensions, is possible since 2012. So we have people that are even, they bebop between the fifth and the third dimension. Because it's kind of like getting used to it and then dropping back down, and you know, just kind of like even moments of lots and lots of consciousness. But even like in the sixth or seventh dimension, stuff still shows up, in the sense of, because we are ascending with our physical body, right? Sometimes there still are things that are stuck in the physical body that are of a lower vibration, right? That are programs that have been running that haven't been looked at. Like we're not what to ascend into and stay in the higher dimension. We need to hold that frequency on a continuously, and hold that consciousness continuously, right? And we can choose in which dimension technically we stay in. If but when we do the jump from the third to the fifth, that's the most difficult jump, and to stay there consciously, but we hold it with our whole body and our whole existence. And then if we stop holding it in that moment, we technically drop. That's what happens in the beginning. We bebop between 3 and 5. But I feel like a lot of people believe or expect that. I know that a lot of people don't even realize that they're actually continuously in the fifth dimension, because they believe there are no lower thoughts, or they believe there's no lower, but you know, stuff still shows up. We still have stuff to clear in the higher dimensions, because we're doing it. We are not beings that came here. A long time ago we did, but we are not beings that came here and we're just exist in the 9th dimension, or in the 7th dimension, or in the 11th dimension. We are ascending. So sometimes with holding the high vibration for such a long time, things still show up that is an old program. And it's like, oh, I got to look at that. And then we got to look at it. We got to clear it. And then we're, back. I don't believe necessarily after we've stayed in the fifth that we start bebopping. We don't drop down after a while anymore if we're capable of holding it all the time. But it's not all roses and flowers and butterflies and magic. We do have stuff still to clear, again, even in the 7th dimension, even in the 8th dimension, because we're doing it this way.
Okay. Yeah, I don't really know it, but my perspective is that at a certain point, even I call it the 5th dimension, there's just technically in a frequency not possible to drop down, because everything gets cleared. I personally, there's a possibility that just all karma of all people will at a certain point be cleared out, and there's just not possible anymore to go into a lower frequency. That's my opinion. I don't know. I can only see it if we're all there and it's really happening. And I even think that there are different possibilities, because the way is clear, the end goal, if we can name it this way, is clear, ascension. But how it will happen, I think also there can still be different ways, or and I don't know it. But the possibility for me is really that suddenly everything is cleared out.
Well, I mean, I do believe that at some point the third dimension will cease to exist. Like it will just cease to exist. It is unraveling itself, and Gaia has ascended. Gaia's vibration is not of the third, it's of the fifth since quite a few years already. So at one point, I do believe that the realities will not support, same as the first and the second dimension. They've ceased to exist a long time ago. And at some point, the third will not be, nobody will be able to enter the third anymore, and it will cease to exist. Now, this can take decades, or like hundreds of years. But for me, definitely the third will cease to exist. So that meaning we will not be able to drop into the third anymore after that, the latest. And there are people already that are in the fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, and higher. I don't think, as much as I know, you can't physically be in the higher than the 12th dimension at the moment, but I don't know. But yeah, definitely. And at one point when of course that's because in the fifth dimension, like you said, karma doesn't exist. So the moment the third dimension ceases to exist and everybody's in the fifth or higher and higher, the karmic cycle definitely doesn't exist at all anymore on this planet. It will cease to exist. Right?
But until we get there,
yes.
you think it's, I would also see it this way. And I see it that probably on a certain time it can get very quickly done. But well, I'm curious.
Yes, definitely. We'll see how everything will unfold. And yeah.
Yes. And yeah, I think we've talked about that in the last videos as well, how we can get out of our victim mode, of our belief systems and everything which holds us back from our true self. And maybe you have something else which you haven't talked about, if you remember, a method or something you do to maybe recognize the ego, or to heal also. I mean, at the end it's just healing, and we raise our frequency. But is there something which could help our listeners and watchers?
Well, and I mentioned this to you like before we started, many years ago. I listened to somebody that was like in an interview, like in a talk like we are right now, and he said to the other person, he's like, I know nothing, right? Me, myself, I know nothing, right? And so if you tell that to yourself, see how your ego reacts to it, right? And if it starts to go berserk like mine did back then, it was screaming at me for 3 days. It was like, I studied, I've come so far, I stand in my power, I know stuff. Yeah. So because I don't know anything. It's my connection, right? It's the vibration that speaks through me. You can call it the Holy Spirit, my higher self, God consciousness that speaks through us. We're the vessels, right? So sometimes like telling ourselves that and seeing how we react, I believe is important. Or I'm a strong believer in a course in miracles, and it has a workbook in there which unravels the ego, which I'm actually doing once more, which I always believe is really important. But there are also definitely, I'm sure there are also other programs out there to assist in that. And also like the deprogramming of the ego and everything. I do believe it's really hard to continuously recognize when our ego comes in and when it doesn't on our own. I do believe sometimes support from the outside, be it like coming to a session with you or coming to a session with me, or there are other people out there, right? And starting with the deprogramming. You know, I call like deep belief systems or stuff that we do in our everyday life that we don't necessarily realize. I call those programs instead of belief systems and all, because a belief system seems like it's so hard to unravel versus a program, you know, just, you know, we can override a program.
You can rewrite,
Override, rewrite, delete, new, right? All that stuff. So that just feels much more doable. Yeah, that's what mm-hmm.
And what helps for me, I think I mentioned it in the last video. It's sometimes, and I experience it myself in a conversation, for example, when there was something coming up and I thought, oh, I might act a little bit out of the ego. I was imagining myself being Buddha, and I really took a position, you know, I crossed my leg, I took a yoga position, and my body posture was changing, and I took deep breath, and I thought, is it really important? And I felt like Buddha, and even the other person in the outside wasn't interfering or did nothing, and we changed the subject and everything was fine. So, but then we need to be aware, because if we're still in the victim mode, we might just explode. If somebody says something, we're not aware, we are not in the reflecting position, because then it's just a ping pong game. But if we're aware and can hold a moment and step back and take a position, and this can be an anchor. And if to other people who really can't do anything with Buddha, take an anchor which resonates with you, which can be a tree, it can be an angel, it can be a certain animal or a figure or whatever you feel gives you power, and on the same time, I don't know, stillness and peace and whatever, and then incorporate it with all your being, not just in the mind, but feel it in the body, and then see what happens.
That's very lovely. Absolutely. That's a perfect exercise.
Yes, and I realized, because some people, they also said they started laughing when they had the idea of imagining themselves as Buddha. They started laughing, and I said, oh, that's even fine, because when you laugh really from the heart, you elevate your frequency, and maybe you've forgotten that you wanted to actually say something or react in an emotional way. So even if you think it's funny or not so nice, try to think of Buddha and you will laugh, and all is good.
Yeah. Nice. That's a nice one. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really good. Yeah.
And for me, this observing position is something important also. And then also you need to be aware. But for me, sometimes I think, or also when I give an exercise to people, I say, imagine yourself sitting on a cloud. You can be really yourself as a person or as an angel. And you imagine, you look down on the situation, what has just happened, or even to go through an old situation and to have a higher perspective and see in a neutral position, and you say, okay, this just happened, and oh, I know what I can change in the future. Or you have this angel position, and this is just also having another perspective is raising your frequency. And if you imagine that also, and maybe even change the physical position, you know, step back and imagine yourself watching in a situation, or having this helicopter position, changing the perspective helps you also come out of the ego and see a bigger picture. And but you have to make this switch from the ego to this higher position. You have to allow it, because if you're in the ego might think, it doesn't help, and what is that? It's just, you know, you don't want to see the reality. this is the ego. But if you change the perspective, you have another view on what is. It's not ignoring something. It's not making something beautiful which isn't, but it's having another perspective, and that's coming out of the ego. And it might take some time. It might take some, do it again and again and again, and suddenly you do it normally. Suddenly it's the thing you do daily, and it comes and it comes, and it's just your natural habit. So everything is possible.
Yeah, I believe that's so important, just stepping out of the ego and getting, there's always, to every single thing, there's a million different aspects to it. And a really nice exercise I had been given a long time ago is in the beginning, it's really nice to do it with paper. You sit down and you take a situation that happened that you didn't like, or that you felt distressed with or wronged or whatever, and you put that situation, kind of, you write it down, like just whatever the word, put it in the middle, and then you extend 5 lines and you find 5 reasons why it's actually a good thing that happened. Right? So that we start to teach our mind to expand and not just see one perspective, but start, quickly seeing other perspectives. And it might take a while to find 5. And then when you have the 5, find another 4, just kind of like, and just continuously do that with different situations that we feel were negative situations, right? Were bad situations, right? And then, and find different reasons why it's actually a good thing, right?
Oh, that's also a very nice exercise. It's also changing the perspective, and there's always something, always. Because even when there's the sun and the cloud is in front of the sun is still there. It's just covered by the clouds. So if we know this, it's clear. There must be the sun. There must be the good stuff behind everything.
Yeah. I mean, even like, I don't even like, sometimes it might take a little while, or sometimes, like I actually just had a talk with a friend a little while ago, and he was telling me of like in where he's working, that there's people going to be laid off there. Right. And he said to me, I can't tell them that, when a door closes, a new one opens, and it's probably, they've been here for so long and they're stagnated, and it's probably a really good thing that this is happening for them, because now it's bringing in change and new possibilities, and amazing stuff will come and everything. Right. But yeah, like, even if we, lose something, or it feels like we're losing something, there's always that point of, there's a million things that open up at the same time, because now we're free, right? Technically, we're free to create whatever. But in that moment, it sometimes, or for people, it sometimes might not feel that way, or doesn't feel that way. And yeah, so we can start to expand our mind, expand that, and see the different aspects of everything. Because again, every single thing has a million different perspectives.
Yes, and that's, I don't know, you told it before, it's we create our reality, because the world outside, yes, my view, your view, and the view of everybody, or the perception is different. And to acknowledge that also, and to know that the solution is already there, because if there's a problem, there must be a solution. The solution is always in the higher perspective, in the higher frequency. Solution can be technically, can be physical, or can be just changing the mindset, or healing, clearing something, whatever. But there's always a solution.
Definitely.
Yes. Oh, nice. Now the bells of the church outside is ringing. Yeah, I know this is, again, as all the topics, it's very interesting, and I think we could go on forever. But Nicky, thank you very much for this conversation and this insight on the... I'm very happy if we can do another video, if you like.
I'd love to. Thank you so much, Monica, for hosting this and for having me here. And thank you, everybody, for watching this.
You're very welcome. And also I would like to thank everybody who is following and watching the videos. Thank you very much. And if you would like to forward it, I don't know, on your social media account, on WhatsApp or whatever, if you write somebody an email whom you think this video would give a good input, we're happy if you do it. Thank you very much, and bye-bye, everybody.